Issue 290. Wait, they're seriously starting the story here and completely cutting past Sonic's fight with the final boss Sonic 2? What the hell? I didn't miss an issue. This is an action series. What the hell were they thinking? That was the one thing they had to show. At least it spares us some padding with a redundant fight that'd be just like the game. But it's in favor of another redundant story that's just like the game. Archie and SCC have already had Sonic CD adaptations. And because they're written by writers with talent who are qualified for the job, they were good, with SCC being fantastic. And I'm guessing this won't hold a candle to them because they'll be just like the game instead of having any creativity. When originality is the only thing that wakes me up in lazy stories like this. New dialogue doesn't count much for creativity, because anyone could think up new dialogue based on an old story. I'm not even going to talk about the story until it gets to something original. I'm showing you the panels anyways, and we already know this. The story is a total C rank so far. I remember Little Planet showing up every month in SCC. So is that original, or following the game lore? Because I was confused at Sonic saying that the planet shows up only once a year. Why is he talking to himself? He's just wasting our time. He, classic Sonic, references the Time Eater, and then says that he barely remembers Sonic Generations, which kinda tries to explain away why there's no paradox with him experiencing his life after the classic era and remembering it all. Except it doesn't try, because it doesn't explain why he forgot any of it. And then he meets Amy. Can the story end already? Predictable shit. I like that Amy says that her tarot cards have never lied to her, so that's interesting. It's not the first and only time she ever used them. Sonic's creeped out by Amy calling him her destined hero, and tells her to stop, which justifies why he ditches her, challenging her to follow him. Sonic doesn't say how long ago he blew up the Death Egg. He just says that he didn't blow it up that long ago. Why did it blow up? I didn't get to see that. So Sonic's questioning why Eggman had the time to put all these machines up here already, when we all know why. Am I done here? This isn't a comic book story. It's an advertisement for a video game that isn't relevant marketing-wise anymore. Archie and SCC advertising the games was understandable because they had just come out, so they were probably forced to do it. Flynn would take any excuse not to come up with something original. So I always assumed this arc was his own choice and he used the anniversary as an excuse. Snively tells Eggman that he's behind schedule because the resources are split between this and the frivolous Carnival Night Zone of his that Eggman thinks is tactically important, but doesn't explain why, so the writing still sucks. There's a reason I didn't assume that this was the case in the game. And Eggman is written completely out of character because he actually realizes he made a mistake by telling Sonic his entire plan, when he brags about his plans all the time. I was gonna compliment the story a little because I thought Sonic was reacting to how silly and pink his mecha looked. And I was gonna lampshade how out of character was of Eggman to make that thing. But instead I didn't even get that self-aware referential jab, in favor of a lampshade being hung on dialogue that wasn't in the game. So it just wastes our time with a story that by definition is dragging out because it's the same thing again. Why isn't it explained why it looks this weird? Like, did Princess Peach design this thing? This arc made me want to read all of Sonic Legacy, because at least that cared enough to show most of Sonic 1 instead of just the final level. And it had an original character in it, so it showed some promise of creativity compared to all this. Sonic beats the mecha. Eggman wonders if the parts of it weakening were because of time travel tomfoolery when I never even saw Sonic time travel, and yells at Eggman, I guess planning on threatening him into unchaining the planet. And Amy stupidly interrupts him with a hug when she should see what's going on, and lets Eggman escape in a smoking Eggmobile. At least SCC explained why the Hell Miracle planet kept disappearing. Or at least where it disappeared to anyways. It went to Planet Drac, which is full of people with magical powers. Oh good, Sonic calls Amy out, and she apologizes. So that's self-aware. It also is that he calls her creepy. I don't remember Fleetway Sonic calling Amy creepy. Then Amy explains why she's sticking around with Sonic, and therefore why she got kidnapped. because she wants to keep following him instead of just being with him for a little bit. There being dialogue just drags out the basic plot of the game with no shit, obvious character interactions. Again, any fanfiction writer could write this story after playing the game. So I want this arc to be over as soon as possible because these never felt like Archie Sonic stories. Sonic's made to jump to dodge some fire, which I guess is supposed to represent Metal Sonic running through the spikes of Collision Chaos Zone. And all the time that Amy was talking in front of Metal Sonic, Sonic had plenty of time to pick Amy up and run away with her. So there being dialogue here just destroys the believability of Amy getting kidnapped. And Sonic is not the type of coward who would just stand there scared like a deer in the headlights. So the story is completely worthless instead of just mostly because it's written even worse than the original. Again! At least the first story was better. This is just redundant and creatively bankrupt. Only an idiot would defend this arc. Sure, it's not as full of plot holes or horrible characters, so it's not horrendous. It's much easier to tolerate than the arc before, so it's a step up. But mediocre isn't good either. Boring is still bad. Bad enough that so few people cared about the comic after this that issue 291 was never even released. Maybe because people thought there was nothing to look forward to. It's almost as if writing a bunch of stories that just steal all its plot from somewhere else that the entire audience is familiar with already doesn't interest comic fans. The only ones who actually buy comics when they first get released and tell Archie that they should keep it around. And the only ones who want to buy subscriptions. Why would most people care about buying the next issue if they know the plot already? Only the biggest possible fans of the comic would. And apparently there weren't many of those left. Archie Sonic single-handedly saved Archie from the comic book industry crash. If a comic is really good, it'll be rewarded with sales and stick around no matter what. What did they think was going to happen to the sales when they bored the death out of the audience? This was the least creative story of them all. At least this was the first comic adaptation of Sonic CD to show off not only the first boss, but also the levels other than the first one, and the second one, and Stardust Speedway. But at this point, the only thing there is to really comment on is saying stuff that just sounds like I'm mentioning trivia. Anyone can do that. I could read the trivia off the wiki page of any Sonic issue. It'd probably be way more interesting than this plot. Sonic says that someone said future, but it's not explained how the sign said future, so the writing still sucks. The fact that we see Sonic go into the past for the first time makes it confusing that Eggman blamed his Mega Parts weakening on time travel. Okay, it's showing Sonic in the various levels, but it's not actually doing anything completely unique to those levels beyond Sonic going to the past with convenient signs to destroy animal capsules. We don't see Sonic get bounced off bumpers in the pinball level, or flippers, or deal with conveyor belts in Quartz Quadrant. The background could be anything for all it mattered. This is literally no better than Collision Chaos' appearance in Archie Sonic. I don't think the names of the levels are even implied. At least the pacing is fast, rushing through the redundant plot finally to get to the part where things are interesting again. But you might as well not read this then. You might even forget that these places showed up in a comic. And that's a shame because this is probably the only time they're ever going to show up in a comic book. And they're just background props. I would have loved if they had the guts to have the beginning plot take place in Quartz Quadrant and beyond. But the writer would be too scared to do that because complete idiots would just complain about being different and say it makes no sense because it wasn't like that in the game, as if the game made any more sense. So any kind of creativity is completely stifled and smothered, and that's why this arc sucks. Archie and SEC had tons of originality in its game adaptations, and it was fine. Nothing bad happened. No one that mattered hated it. This just makes the modern comics look permanently and inherently inferior, as the writers had the confidence to feel like they could get away with things. No one was terrified of the fanbase back then holding back because of it. I'm just ranting here out of sheer boredom and desperation for something to actually talk about when I'm forced to make this video for myself. Right from the moment I saw the cover, it sickened me to see that the issue would have the Metal Sonic race in it, because Archie already did that, and would inevitably do it a trillion times better. Metal Sonic doesn't talk here, so my point was proven right. He's not entertaining me. So they should just skip to the end of the race where Sonic has to win. I know I want to. There's no real tension. Rick and Morty at least have the possibility of a character getting injured. Well, it was sweet of Sonic to call Metal Sonic cool. And Eggman complains that Sonic cheated because he started the race early, which is more realistic than the game. Oh wow, that's lazy. Archie Sonic is definitely better at its race than this boring garbage. The entire race was trapped in 2 pages with no dialogue to entertain you, where your eyes will inevitably be drawn to the wrong part of it and you'll have to make an active effort to follow the race and experience it in chronological order. I saw the center first. Even the game at least had Sonic jumping over spikes and on platforms. This doesn't even show that. And for once, originality is bad because it makes things even more boring and bland. Archie was objectively better because it interested me by having Metal Sonic taunt Sonic, having Snivelly in disguise as Eggman following Sonic, while Eggman was ready to make the wall slam down, and having Sonic have to use his super peel out towards the end while running. So that Metal Sonic overexerted himself and melted himself trying to keep up. Oh, that sounds pretty interesting because there was actual effort on the part of the writer to think up. This was just stolen from a children's game. How mature. The writing's too lazy to explain how long Amy's been waiting, which could have resolved the potential plot problem. It would have been way too dark if she'd been waiting too long. There was a point in reading the Archie story, because it was a much more new experience. But this is practically a waste of time. When I said I wanted to see the reboot from the beginning, I meant original stories. Everyone already knew that the games were canon to it, so there's no point in showing any of this. Didn't Flynn realize that? How did he rescue the king, and not exit disguised as the king? It's not explained where the signposts that let you time travel come from. But at least Eggman says that it's his UFOs, so maybe the things in the special stages were his way of trying to get the time stones, instead of just being weird things that were there for the same reason everything else was. The story ends without even bothering to show the end of Sonic's TV, because time was wasted. Instead it tells us that the next issue will be showing the end of the Death Egg saga, so they're inexplicably interrupting the final boss of Sonic 2 to show us a completely different game's plot that happened at a different time from it? How do you screw this up? Am I really supposed to be super sad that a completely stolen, unoriginal plot wasn't ever released? I already know how the final boss of Sonic 2 goes. All that next issue would have added is annoying dialogue that padded out. This was an embarrassing end to the main comic issues, where it looks like the comic ran out of ideas. It ran out of creative steam and there were consequences. Archie probably noticed that people weren't buying the issues as much because they knew the plot already, and took that as a lame excuse to cancel it. Even the off panel is way more interesting than this. Why couldn't this have been the whole plot? This is like showing off an alternate universe version of Sonic. That was right up early Archie Sonic's alley. If issue 52 did something like that, then that'd be interesting. It's interesting to see Eggman have to hold up a stop sign for community service. And if you think the off panels are too silly to have entire main stories around, you're forgetting that this is a magical hedgehog. I'd rather have a story be silly and interesting than boring. This issue is by Ian Flynn. Although if it's going to be so much like another person's plot, maybe they should have credited the Sonic CD writer. It's literally just the plot of Sonic CD, but with predictable dialogue. That's it. Snivelly was talked to by Eggman. We didn't even get to see him. It was interesting that he was talking as if Carnival, Night Zone, and Knuckles were already a thing at this point, when Sonic CD was pretty far behind Sonic 3. This was the definition of a mediocre, boring, and worthless story, because it's just barely a new experience. It's not like it's full of plot holes or horrible characterization, so it was tolerable for me to read through all of it in one sitting. I just wanted to end the entire time because there was almost no effort in it. I don't have much nostalgia for the classic Sonic games, but even if it was a story about Sonic Adventure 2, I'd still be bored and questioning why the story exists if it's not nearly original enough. You might think, what's the point of having a game adaptation if it's not the same story? Well, what is the point of making a game adaptation in the first place? If I wanted to see the same story again, I'd see the original story again. Creativity is a really important thing to impress me with. Another thing is the characters being considerate, or even making me laugh. The 90s and 70s Sabrina comics have this in spades. This is the worst Sonic CD adaptation by far. Now, it'll be unacceptable if Sonic Universe is as unoriginal as this. I'm assuming it's not, and it's an exciting, actual Archie Sonic arc. Sadly, there's a Sonic Mega Drive special after this, instead of something actually creative. Oh boy, they're using ideas that we've already seen before.